of our journey, and I'm going to show you this book over here, which is my inspiration for this journey, which is Programming Bitcoin by Jimmy Song. Learn how to program Bitcoin from scratch. Why are we learning how to program Bitcoin to understand it? Well, this book, it actually teaches you everything, and basically you'll be able to build all the components of a Bitcoin library, literally from scratch. And the idea is that we're going to get into the maths, the cryptography, the blocks, the transactions, everything related to Bitcoin, so we can really understand what happens behind the scenes. A lot of the FOMO and confusion and misconceptions going around in cryptocurrencies is because we don't really understand what's going on in this technology. So that is why I'm taking this approach, because I feel like when you really know and you can apply your knowledge to something, that's when you can really say that you understand it. For example, decentralization. A lot of coins aren't decentralized in the true sense of the word, but these promoters and content creators, they push it out like, because it's just an underappreciated word. We don't, people, they're taking advantage of the fact that people don't really understand what that means. Even I don't really understand what that means from a really deep technical perspective. So I'm not going to be sharing this book. It is copyrighted, but I will be using it as a guide. And then, of course, sorry, I see we got disconnected there briefly. So we are using this book as a guide, but you, of course, can get the book yourself, and it will also help you. We're going to be using plenty of other resources as well. And yeah, so according to the book, where we need to have a good foundation is maths, whoopee, and programming. So I just want to show you for the maths, for example, this is an elliptic curve, and somehow this correlates with Bitcoin. So we're going to get our hands dirty with some algebra. But for starters, this book is actually, it's aimed to help you program Bitcoin, but we need to have a knowledge of Python. So I was like, oh no, Python. I have experienced a little bit of fundamental understanding in JavaScript. The first time I tried coding, it was Python, but my experience was terrible. I think the course was on Coursera. And then I switched over to JavaScript on Udemy, and I absolutely fell in love with JavaScript. And you know what it all boils down to is the teacher. I use Jonas Schmidtman. So he's amazing. If you want to get into these courses, that's great to build your skills, build your fundamentals. Jonas has lots of practical exercises that help a lot. For purposes of this channel, I'm going to be making use of free resources just to get an understanding of the fundamentals, and you guys can follow along with me. And then, of course, if you want to expand on these, nobody's stopping you. So I'm going to now switch over to the web, where we will start some fundamentals in Python. So I'm just busy deactivating my video. So I found two websites here. We've got www.learnpython.org, and then we have learn.microsoft.com. I'll put the links in the video description. Did I switch over? I did. Okay. Need to stream it. Okay, so these are the two websites we're going to use. I chose these two. What will happen if we feel that we need to expand on certain things or get more resources, more examples, then we'll do that. As a start, I'm doing this for the first time with you guys, so we're just going to start here. So probably learnpython.org is a good place to start, and let's go. So we've got here learn the basics, data science tutorials, advanced tutorials, and other Python tutorials. So there's quite a bit going on here. Just want to make sure that my stream is still good. Okay. So let's step into the basics. Hello world. Great. Python is a very simple language and has a very straightforward syntax. It encourages programmers to program without boilerplate prepared code. The simplest directive in Python is the print directive. It simply prints out a line and also includes a new line, unlike in C. There are two major Python versions, Python 2 and Python 3. Python 2 and 3 are quite different. This tutorial uses Python 3 because it's more semantically correct and supports newer features. For example, one difference between Python 2 and 3 is the print statement. In Python 2, the print statement is not a function and therefore it is invoked without parentheses. However, in Python 3, it is a function and must be invoked with parentheses. This is great because I know, having just briefly gone through the book, that it is based on Python 3. Then I just want to see here. Right, so the parenthesis is the brackets. I see, is it going to explain to us like what functions are? Yeah, we do get to functions. What are functions? Functions are a convenient way to divide your code into useful blocks, allowing us to order our code, make it more readable, reuse it, and save some time. Also, functions are a key way to define interfaces so programmers can share their code. As we have seen on previous tutorials, Python makes use of blocks. Let's go here. By the way, we're using ChatGPT to our full advantage. So I'm going to go back. The way I understand functions is it's like a tool that you can reuse over and over again if you assign like a variable to it so that you don't have to keep reprint or telling the computer to do the same thing but having to type it out each time. That's based on JavaScript. Yep. Maybe somebody can tell me what the experience is of ChatGPT 4. I feel like it's a lot of money. What is meant by syntax? in Python programming. Syntax refers to the set of rules that define the structure of a valid Python program. Syntax determines how code must be written to be correctly interpreted by the Python interpreter. It includes the proper arrangements of keywords, operators, variables, functions, and other elements. Key aspects of Python syntax include indentation. Python uses indentation to define the code structure of blocks. Variables. Variables are assigned using the equal operator. Great. Comments. Comments are added using the hashtag symbol for single line comments and triple quotes for multi-line comments. So comments are like when you maybe want to explain something in your code, then you use a comment. It's not going to actually run it as if it's code. That makes sense. You can just write like a normal thing. Keywords. Python has reserved keywords that have special meanings and cannot be used as variable names. So as I understand it, the if, else, for, while, def, return, those are used when creating functions because they have a function to them, right? Data types. Python supports various data types such as integers, floats, strings, lists, tuples, dictionaries, and sets. Operators. Python uses operators for maths, basically. Functions. Functions are defined using the def keyword. Oh, great. Okay, so now we will know how to create a function, followed by the function name and parentheses. Control flow. Python uses control flow statements like if, elif, else, for, while, and break to control the execution of code. So I think that's if you want to maybe make a loop, a code that repeats itself until something happens, or when a certain condition is met, then something happens. Understanding Python syntax is essential for writing programs that run correctly and efficiently. The syntax rules ensure that the code is readable and maintainable. Yeah. Do we understand now what is meant by syntax? So it's a set of rules that define the structure of a valid Python program. So we're going to have to know the syntax from a foundational perspective, at least to be able to read the code and also to be able to do things. So we got to make sure we get our indentation right. We're going to learn how to assign variables. We're going to know how to do comments. So you have to, for example, insert a hashtag for single line comments. We're going to identify keywords. We're going to learn about the different data types, the different operators, the functions or how to define a function, control flow, and yeah, okay. So if we go back to the statement, Python is a very simple language and has a very straightforward syntax. Great. It encourages programmers to program without prepared code. What do they mean by boilerplate? What is meant by this? It encourages programmers to program without boilerplate code. This refers to the design philosophy of Python that aims to minimize unnecessary or repetitive code. In many programming languages, boilerplate code refers to sections of code that have to be included in many places with little or no alteration. Such code often adds overhead and makes the code base more complex and harder to maintain. Okay, I'm happy with that. The simplest directive in Python is the print directive. So this is what we're going to be learning. So print, then we've got our parenthesis, our inverted commas, and basically it should print, this line will be printed, right? This line will be printed. So if I say, I like to do it from scratch, print, this line will be printed. I'm not sure if it's like JavaScript, but I'm going to put a semicolon, enter. Right. Oh, freak. I wanted to write hello world. Hello world. Love it. Radio. Here we go. Indentation. Python uses indentation for blocks instead of curly braces. Both tabs and spaces are supported, but the standard indentation requires standard Python code to use 4 spaces. For example, x equals 1. If x equal 1, prints x is 1. Indented 4 spaces. Let's try that out. I'm used to curly brackets. X equals, if x, I think this is the strict equality operator, meaning because you have numbers and strings, and depending on the program you're using, you might want it to strictly identify the 1 as a number. Then we've got colon. Oh, so it's indented it for us automatically. So I presume, you see, if I don't put colon, then it just goes to the next line. So I'm going to put the colon, and then it actually indents automatically. X is 1. So it should say X is 1 twice. Perfect. Use the print function to print the line, hello world. We've done that. Oh, it wants to test me. Hello world. Submit. Great job. This site, oh, okay. I'm not going to read that. Take the test. When's the test? Hello world. Next, is there a test now? This already. Okay. I don't think we're ready for that. So in that case, let me just quickly read it. Hello world. Why doesn't want to? Okay, we've done it. Variables and types. Python is completely object-oriented and not statically typed. You do not need to declare variables before using them or declare their type. Every variable in Python is an object. This tutorial will go over a few basic types of variables. So let's understand what they're saying here when it's object orientated. What is me? This. Just want to check my stream health. Yep, looks good. The statement Python is completely object-oriented means that Python is a programming language where everything is represented as an object. This includes not only complex data structures, but also primitive data types and functions. Here are some key points that illustrate this concept. Everything is an object. In Python, all data types are objects, whether they are user-defined, classes, or built-in types like integers, strings, lists, dictionaries. So you can define an object or a variable. Variable is a better word. For example, let age equal 19. That's a user-defined variable. Or you can build in objects, like you can create a string of information, and that whole string becomes an object. Classes and instances. Python uses classes to define objects and their behaviors. I'm not familiar with that, to be honest. Methods and attributes. Objects in Python can have attributes like data and methods, functions that operate on the data. I think this sums it up in a nutshell. So basically, our job as programmers is to have the data and then use functions so that stuff happens with that data. That's why it's basically completely object orientated, because it's based on the data. You do not need to declare variables before using. Hang on. I'm sorry if there was an interruption there. I am still trying to work on my internet. So it looks like at this stage they're giving us two types of variables, variable types, numbers and strings. And my understanding, you should declare variables before you use them to prevent bugs and errors in code. But let's see how we go along. Python supports two types of numbers: integers, whole numbers, and floating point numbers. In other words, decimals. It also supports complex numbers, which will not be explained in this tutorial. To define an integer, use the following syntax. My int equals 7. Or we can say my age equals 31. And then we're going to say print, because otherwise it's just going to say that we want to actually print the result, my age. So my age becomes the variable that we've created, and it's a number. I wonder if it's, see there it's printed 7 and 31. I wonder if it's going to tell us, because I know in JavaScript you can check like what type of variable it is. It's going to show us that function. To define a floating point number, you may use one of the following notations. my float equals 7.0, print my float, or float bracket 7. Let's see what it gives us. So it seems like float is a type of, I don't know if function's the right word. That is so random. Why would you use float? Because it works just fine with the decimal. Oops, sorry. My age, my birthday was in February 31. I'll say 31.2. Print my age, whoops, or we can say my age equals floats, and then in brackets 31.2, print my age. This is one reason, to be honest, why I really like JavaScript. Like, do you see here how twice we've changed the variable? We're still using the same variable name. So the fact that it can just change just like that makes me a bit uncomfortable. We got the result right, which is great. Okay, then strings. Strings are defined either with a single quote or double quotes. That's easy enough. But, oh, and it looks like, so another important thing with coding, right? You want to follow, like, there's some rules, like, not that it will create bugs in your code, but you want to, you see here, all the words are in lowercase with no spacing. So we want to do a similar thing so that our code is clean and neat. So bit peeps equals bit. Now we can write it normally. Bit peeps is amazing. Print, don't forget to do the print. Bit peeps. And it's even picking it up, so I just have to press tab. Now I'm going to change it. Bit peeps equals, and use double quotation marks. Bit peeps is amazing. Print bit peeps. Print. Okie dokie. The difference between the two is that using double quotes makes it easy to include apostrophes, whereas these would terminate the string if using single quotes. Let's run it and see what happens. Don't worry about apostrophes. Well, I want to see what happens if I use single quotes. My string equals, suppose it makes sense because it would get confused. You see, so the purple, it's picked up because you're only using single quotes. It's only going to run the code up to N. If I say, don't worry, apostrophes, print my string. And it's giving us an error. Invalid syntax. Because we've got all this stuff after here and the code doesn't know, or the program, the computer, doesn't know what to do with it. So from now on, we will only, because we don't want bugs, we will only be using double quotes for our strings. There are additional variations on defining strings that make it easier to include things such as carriage returns, backslashes, and Unicode characters. These are beyond the scope of this tutorial, but are covered in the Python documentation. I hope that they do include this in the later on tutorials. So for example, what happens is like here we've defined, or they've defined 1 equals 1, 2 equals 2. So they've changed it into a number format. 3 equals 1 plus 2, print 3. And it gives us 3. So what it's, yeah, okay, it's added up the numbers. 1 plus 2 equals 3. Hello. Now that's with numbers. So they're giving us 2 examples. Now that they're going to show us what happens when we try and do the same thing, but with a string. And this is like when you want to combine, like, for example, sentences together, then it starts to get a bit more tricky. So hello equals hello. So they've made it as a string, and then world. Hello world equals hello plus, and then they put, why did they put that there? They put 2 apostrophes plus world. Hello plus. Oh, I think it's because they need a space. Otherwise, it will just show as one world, as one word, sorry. Because if we say hello equals hello, and we have world equals world, and we say hello world equals hello plus world, it's not going to divide it into 2 words. Print hello world. So if we run it, do you see here? So that's why we have to manually create a space. That can be a bit of a pain. And what they're doing it, because this is just a basic tutorial, there are ways you can work around this. Because can you imagine having to count spaces in multiple lines of code when you're trying to create the string? So there are ways of working around this, like in JavaScript, you can use backticks. So I'm hoping we can get to more advanced tutorials. Just checking my stream health. Seems fine. Okay, assignments can be done on more than one variable simultaneously on the same line like this. Oh, that's great. So remember, they're using the word assignment here. What they mean is we are assigning a value to a variable. So 1 is our variable, and then that's the number, that's 1 the word, and the value we're assigning to it is 1 the number. So here, instead of having to do it on 2 lines of code, A equals 3, another line, B equals 4, we can separate it with a comma, and in 1 line of code define 2 different variables, or assign values to 2 different variables. I hope that makes sense. If we print, we'll get 3, 4. No comma, sorry. So we can even, just to illustrate to you, we can switch them around. Print, yeah. So now to just switch them around, because we've managed to assign it. Mixing operators between string numbers and strings is not supported. Let's see what happens. So we've got 1, we've got 2, we've got hello as the string hello. So we've got a combination here of a string and 2 numbers. And now if we try and combine them, it's giving us an error. unsupported operand types for plus, integer, and string. So it's telling us there we're trying to add a number and a string, and it won't allow us to do that. I also know from JavaScript that there is a way where you can, I think there is a way where you can convert a number to a string, but then the math starts to get weird. Anyway, exercise. The target of this exercise is to create a string, an integer, and a floating point number. The string should be named myString and should contain the word hello. The floating point number should be named myFloat and should contain the number 10.0, and the integer should be named myInt and should contain the number 20. I don't like it when people do the work for me. I'm going to do it myself from scratch. So myString equals, remember it's a string and we're using the double apostrophe. myFloat equals 10.0. myInt equals 20. So remember, integers are whole numbers in Python. Now it wants us to basically test the code. If my string equals hello, in other words, if it is the string exactly as it is hello, print string if n is instance. We didn't create an is instance. Why are they confusing us with other code here? I don't know what these mean. Next. So we are now going to be doing lists. Lists are very similar to arrays. They can contain any type of variable. Remember, we've done numbers and strings. And they can contain as many variables as you wish. So it can be, because remember, Python is object orientated. So it makes sense that you can put in as much data as you want. Lists can also be iterated over in a very simple manner. Here is an example of how to build a list. So I just want to get some clarity from ChatGPT. How are lists similar to arrays in Python? And what is the difference? Lists in Python are similar to arrays in other programming languages in several ways, but there are also key differences between them. Here's a detailed comparison. Similarities. See, index collection. Both lists and arrays are index collection. So I suppose we'll see how that works. But remember, Python indexed it for me. Mutable. Both lists and arrays are mutable, meaning their contents can be changed after they're created. That makes sense. So if you want to change like a number or name, you can do that after iteration. You can iterate over both lists and arrays using loops. Differences. Lists. Python lists can hold elements of different data types within the same list. Arrays created using the array module or similar packages typically require elements to be of the same type. So basically, in a very simple way, a list can contain strings and numbers, but an array can only hold one type of variable. Lists are built into the Python core and do not require any imports to use. Arrays are not built into Python core. You need to import the array module or use the packages like NumPy for more advanced array functionalities. Performance. Lists are flexible, but might be less efficient in terms of memory and speed for numerical operations compared to arrays. Arrays are more memory efficient for large collections of uniform data types and often provide better performance for numerical operations. Good to know. Functionality. Lists provide a wide range of built-in methods for operations like appending, extending, inserting, removing, and sorting. Arrays from the array module are more limited in functionality compared to lists. However, arrays from libraries like NumPy provide extensive functionalities for mathematical and logical operations. So this is something I recall also from JavaScript. There is a way you can, let's say you've created your list and you want to add something afterwards. Instead of having to redo the whole list, you can use certain functions to just insert it without having to retype the whole thing. So now we understand the differences and the similarities. So as mentioned, a list can contain any type of variable and as many as we want. So my list equals, and then it looks like we use the square brackets to create a list. My list dot append 2, 3. It's my list 0, 1, 2. Is that how we create a list? We've got to use append. It should say 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Why has it done it twice? 1, 2, 3. For x in my list, print x, prints out 1, 2, 3. That's comment. Okay, before I go further down, so you will see here, we have our variable, which is my list. And then we're just going to put in square brackets. So it looks to me like Python then can now pick up that we want to create a list by using the square brackets, but there's no values in the list. So now on the next line of code, we have to say my list, and we use the word append, and then in brackets, we put in whatever we want to be part of our list. Remember, in this example, they've only used numbers, but it looks like for lists in Python, we can use numbers or strings. And then the first thing I want to point out here, when they said prints, right? Now remember, the variable that we're printing is my list. right? But now it's put in the square brackets, it's put in 0, 1, and 2. You see that underneath here? 0, 1, 2. So what happens is when you create a list and you want to refer at any point in time to a position in that list, then you basically, the list is automatically numbered, but it doesn't start from the number 1, it starts from the number 0. So that's something important you have to remember, because if you print item number 1 thinking it's the first item that we added, it's actually going to give you the number 2, because number 1 actually starts here, and Python, I think JavaScript is the same, starts counting or numbering the list from 0. So keep that in mind. I don't understand for X in my list, print X. Because my understanding, we haven't defined X, so I don't understand how that one works. I'm also curious to see if I say print my list without defining, I just want to print the whole list. What's going to happen? There we go. So that just illustrates what I was explaining. So it's printed our whole list, 1, 2, 3. But let's say you want to print the first item on your list. You're not going to say print my list square brackets 1. You're going to say print my list square brackets 0, and then work up from there. Should we ask ChatGPT why? What is? I don't understand the if section of this code because X is not defined. So how does it still print 1, 2, 3? How does it still print 1, 2, 3 and underneath each other? I can't stand these pop-ups. And underneath each other. Control V. So ChatGPT is going to actually explain it better. First of all, we initialized the list. As I said, we told Python that we were going to create a list using the square brackets. Then we need to add elements to the list by using append. These lines add the elements 1, 2, and 3 to my list. After these operations, my list contains 1, 2, 3. Then we're printing specific elements. To print the entire list, okay, that's what I did, iterating through the list. This is a for loop that iterates over each element in my list. The variable x takes on the value of each element in the list, one at a time. During each iteration, print x prints the current value of x. In the first iteration, x is 1, so it prints 1. In the second, x is 2. In the third, x is 3, so it prints 3. The ChatGPT is also explaining that the code does not contain an if statement. The confusion might come from thinking x should be defined before the loop. In Python, the for loop handles the definition and assignments of X within the loop scope. So I suppose what's happened here is similar to where I said print my list, but you'll notice that the difference is where mine has literally printed the list with the square brackets, because remember we define our list with the square brackets and it's got the commas. What the 4x in my list does is it basically prints x, because we've used the print function, and it iterates each item on the list to give us the value of each item therein. So it's underneath each other. So depending on how you want your data, it's probably a good thing to know. So 4x in my list. And remember, to create the indentation, we need the colon, print x. Accessing an index which exists generates an exception. Right, so remember, when we can say print my list here, and it prints the entire list, or we can say, you know what, I want to know what number 10 is on my list of items. What is it? If there is no, if your list, like in this example, only has 3 variables, or variables is the wrong word, sorry, elements, if it only has 3 elements, there is no 10th element to print, so it's going to give us an error. List index out of range. So it's basically telling us 10 is out of a range. We can also, just to show you, and just so that we can remember as well, if I say print my list bracket 3, can you tell me why it's not going to work? It's not going to work because remember, we don't start counting from 1. We start counting from 0. So it's 0, 1, 2. This list only has a range of up to 2 elements, not 3. Exercise. In this exercise, you will need to add numbers and strings to the correct list using the append list method. You must add the numbers and the words hello and world to the strings variable. You will also have to fill in the variable second name with the second name. It's that the index is 0 based. So if you want to access the second item on the list, its index will be 1. So we know that by now. So here we've told the computer that we are creating a list. We're creating 2 lists. One is numbers, one is strings. 4, and then it looks like we've gone right in. Oh, so there's 3. Sorry, there's 3 lists, names. So it's done names for us. It looks like we don't have, because that's what they've done here on the names list. They've already done it. So this is our numbers list. We're going to add 1. Oh, they want us to use the append method. So numbers dot append, should we say equal? Every No, we just put it in brackets. Numbers dot append 1. This was so weird. I thought this was supposed to be less writing. 1, 2, numbers dot append 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. to the numbers list, and world to the strings variable. So strings dot append. Hello. So we will say name. I see we briefly got disconnected. So to do the second part of this question, to fill in the variable second name of the second name in the names list, we are going to first of all refer to our variable, which is called names. And then we're going to use our square brackets to tell us which elements in the names list are we assigning to the variable second name. And that would be, this is 0, this is 1. So it's going to be 1. Submit. We got it. The second name on the names list is Eric. So the question was, using the append method to assign the elements 1, 2, and 3 to the numbers list. On the strings list, we also appended hello and world. We're doing it underneath each other, but we can also do it like this. Right in here, we can just insert hello, and that will be item number 1, 0, and then world. That will be element number 2. So now we're using the appendix method. Then for the second name, you can see here that if you use the underscore, keep that in mind for coding in Python, how it all looks so that our code is tidy. And to that variable second name, we had to assign element 2 from the names list. So of course we are going to first put in our list name, which is names. But now, second name is not the whole name. We're just looking for a specific name from this list, and that would be I think because I'm having problems. Disclosure, save. Yeah, I'm having problems with my connectivity. I'm going to see if I can sort that out. So for now, I'm going to stop the video, but we will be carrying on with our basics in Python, and our next video will be basic operators. I hope so far it's helping, and definitely go to the website. It is learnpython.org, and try and do it yourself. A lot of the times when it comes to learning coding, it doesn't help to just listen. You've got to actually try and do it yourself. At the end of the day, this is going to help us to understand the code and the programming behind Bitcoin, and, as they say, know what's going on under the hood. For watching.